alternative experience.
The alternative experience.
The alternative experience.
Hey everybody, Nicky Joe here. So welcome to another episode of Alternative Experience. I have been away for a couple of weeks. Been having a whole load of work done on my house, so it's been very, very difficult to find the time to record podcasts. So apologies there. I know you've missed me a great deal. So what I want to do this week is I want to carry on sort of kind of a theme that I've been sort of touching upon recently with regards to the power of language, the word, the chosen word, that kind of thing. And I suppose it's based around like an experience that I had as a kid, which was really innocuous at the time, but it has popped up a few times as a memory that stuck with me, and it has relevance. And even more so now that I'm running my coaching business and I'm seeing the same sort of pattern in so many people that I see within the business. And that's what really sort of spurred this idea on. Now, it's basically the true power of suggestion. The young human mind is like a sponge, so be careful what you tell it. Now, it was sometime late in 1991. I was on my way to school in the back of my mum's metallic brown Datsun Sunny. Big up yourself, what a car that was. Now, Queen was playing on the radio as one of the world's greatest frontmen had just passed away. Now, little did I know, and again now I know with hindsight, but I was about to experience my first meaningful lesson into the power of suggestion, the power of the word, and moreover, the malleability of the young human mind. Now, although this experience has always been prevalent at certain stages throughout my life, it's only really now in my 40s that I've been able to really contextualize it. Like I say, more so because of the business that I'm now running and seeing those patterns in other people. Why was this so imprinted in my mind? Why did it seem to hold, I suppose, such unexplained significance? What made it more memorable than so many other experiences that I'd had? Now, the instance I'm referring to will seem extremely trivial, even completely insignificant to most of you, and that is actually the point. It's one of the points I'm trying to make in this podcast, so hopefully it makes sense. Now, I was always, even as a really young kid, I was always a massive, massive fan of music. My parents did a very good job in that respect. They played a lot of very, very cool music when I was a kid, and I was into old, new, all that sort of stuff. And during said trip to school, I was whistling along to Queen with all of my gusto. I remember I was giving it everything, when all of a sudden, my mum shouted in frustration, "Nicky Joe, stop that racket. You really cannot whistle." I may have actually added that last bit. I can't remember for sure. It was a long, long time ago, but that's what my young mind heard. Now, as far as my amazing mum is concerned, that was that. I stopped whistling, sat down in the back of the car, and as far as she was concerned, I behaved myself for the remainder of the journey. But again, with hindsight, this stuck with me. So obviously it had more impact on me, or it meant more to me. Now I'm going to revisit this specific experience in a bit more detail to provide some extra context in a moment, mainly to explain that my mum wasn't an angry, evil wench that enjoyed crushing the dreams of her children. But for now, let's fast forward a few years to the mid-noughties. Now, anyone that's followed me for any amount of time will know I'm quite open. I was no saint, and I'm more than open about the fact that I thoroughly enjoyed my late teens and my 20s. And during one weekend session, a friend of mine and I, Simon Phillips, found ourselves in a very familiar spot, the last men standing. We were propping ourselves up in my kitchen, talking complete nonsense, laughing our tits off at everything that we said because we were so funny, when all of a sudden, on my shuffle, on my iPod, War of the Worlds came on, or one of the tracks from War of the Worlds. Now, this album played an integral part in my childhood. I would often sit there and listen to this on my dad's record player, and I don't have very many sort of close or repetitive memories of my dad from when I grew up, so it really does hold a lot of significance for me. And after around 15 whistleless years, I belted out an entire track. And I was genuinely waiting for my mate to put his hand over his ears and tell me to stop. in disapproval. But what actually happened is he got his mobile phone out, early days of video phones, so it wasn't the best quality, but he began recording. The next day we both watched it while eating hangover food, only to realise it was actually drunken musical genius. No, really, I somehow hit every single high note perfectly, and we were both absolutely devastated a couple of months later when his phone died in a pub urinal, taking all of the evidence with it. But by that time, everyone had seen it. It was absolutely hilarious. Now, the point I'm trying to make with this long-winded and, I suppose, slightly off-piste fashion is I spent my entire teenage life simply not whistling in front of people because I genuinely thought I sounded awful just off the back of that one really small incident in the back of that metallic Datsun Sunny. Now, I know what you're saying. First world problems. Little Nicky couldn't whistle. I just want to explain, I'm not using this as an example due to how devastating its impact was. Its impact was very, very minimal, and that's the point. I use it just to make the point that humans, especially children, are extremely suggestible, and especially when that message is being delivered by sort of those that we love, respect, and obviously look up to. Now, who knows how many of these types of trivial incidences happen throughout our young lives, and we don't ever even sort of notice, they don't sort of live long in the memory, yet their sort of effects may remain for a very long time. How do these sort of instances impact or shape the person experiencing them, and in turn the type of person they actually become? Now, granted, whistling was never going to affect my life path, but what are the effects of maybe a frustrated throwaway comment like, "You're so naughty, stop that behaviour," even worse, "You're so stupid"? I mean, we say a lot of things in the heat of the moment, and I'm sure that not all isolated incidences have as profound an effect as my 15 whistleless years. But we do really need to be really extremely careful about how we speak to our children. It's also a really very well-known fact that if you continuously scold a specific part of a child's personality or behaviour, it doesn't take very long for them to sort of start believing that part of them is defective. And this has also been shown to have many negative downstream effects surrounding things like self-belief, self-worth. It can often lead to things like underachievement, or worse still, anger, frustration, those outward aggressive behaviours. Now, life is obviously tough, it's stressful, and there's going to be many, many times that it's going to be extremely tempting to shout, scream and scold. However, the next time it happens, just take a moment to think about poor little Nicky Joe and the 15 years of joy that he missed out on, and hopefully that'll be enough to make you smile and snap you out of your stupor. The really funny thing is, just to sort of add a little bit further context to this, as I did actually mention this to my mum a couple of years ago when she came and visited me in Portugal, and she had absolutely no memory of it at all. She kind of explained that she was a single parent. She was always trying to get from one job to the other, while at the same time ensuring that she had two kids going to and from school on time. And she was probably just extremely stressed and just kind of saying it out of kind of unconscious frustration, which is what we all do. And that's what we need to work on. Now, I recently recorded a podcast about the power of language and the words that you use both internally and externally. And what may seem an innocent throwaway comment made in frustration could be taken very differently by those that they're sort of directed to. And since I've started my coaching business 6 years ago, I have been truly amazed at just how many people have suffered kind of similar experiences, sometimes with rather sort of innocuous, seemingly innocent sort of experiences like mine, but oftentimes the words were far worse, and their sort of direct downstream effects have been devastating. It really has kind of opened my eyes to the type of language that I use around my two young girls. Now, don't get me wrong, I am far from perfect and I often slip up, but I take a lot of solace in the fact that I now have the awareness when I do it. Oftentimes most people do it and they don't even notice, but I'm very, very aware when I do sort of slip up, and I do my best not to, which is all that we can do. Now, one thing, there's obviously a lot of tools you can use, and you can do a lot of research into the mind to try and better understand yours. One of my favorite books on the subject is called The Four Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. Absolutely brilliant book. It's fascinating, really thought-provoking sort of journey into what they say the four main rules of life. Now, rule one, the reason I mention it, is to be impeccable with your word. Again, both internally and externally. Now, it sounds really simple, always be impeccable with your word. But I would say it's almost impossible to truly live by it all day, every day. I don't think it's possible. But that being said, I think if it was mastered, it would guarantee to improve every single aspect of how you experience your life. So, what are your thoughts? Do you personally remember any experience that kind of stuck with you throughout your life? Negative? Well, similarly, did you have any positive experience? Did anybody that you really looked up to maybe sort of give you a compliment about something you've done that really sort of boosted you, and you've used that throughout your life? Whatever it was that shaped the person you are today, negative and positive comments are both of interest, really, because it's the same thing. The words you use will sort of kind of shape the person that you're sort of a caregiver to. Now, do me a favor, leave a comment, and as always, please help me to beat the evil algorithm, by giving me a like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, peace to you all. As we say in Portugal, bom fim de semana. Have a good weekend.